This is the tragic story of the Boy Scout who made his entire neighborhood radioactive. Nicknamed the Nuclear Boy Scout, David Hahn was a teenager from Michigan who was obsessed with nuclear radiation. When he was only 15, David attempted to build a nuclear reactor in his backyard shed, using radioactive material from household items including vintage clocks, smoke detectors, and gun sights. Within 2 years, David had built a functioning reactor which gave off enough radiation to be detected throughout his entire neighborhood. David was soon caught by police when they found hazardous materials in his car during a routine stop and thought he was building an atomic bomb. When David's shed was raided by the EPA, they determined that his project had created dangerous levels of radiation, leading them to dismantle the building and classify it as hazardous waste. This mugshot from 2006 shows David covered in sores as a result of his extensive exposure to radiation. This, combined with continuous legal and mental health issues, led to David's early passing at the age of 39 from an accidental overdose. Morbid Facts, Part 402. George Lopez has a genetic condition that caused his kidneys to slowly deteriorate. So when he needed a new kidney in 2005, his wife Ann gave him one of her own. A couple years later, George reportedly cheated on his wife, then divorced her in 2010, all while wearing her kidney. The first scientist to observe penguins engaging in gay intercourse, grape, and necrophilia was so disturbed that he tried to obscure his findings to prevent people from knowing the truth about penguins. In 1995, a substitute school bus driver in Illinois stopped at a red light with the back part of the bus still on some train tracks. The children were screaming for her to move the bus forward as a train approached, but she was confused about what they meant. The train struck the bus at 60 miles per hour and 7 children were killed. In 2018, Gloria Williams pleaded guilty to posing as a nurse to abduct Kamaya Mobley from her mother's arms in the maternity ward. She was sentenced to 18 years in prison, the same length of time Kamaya was separated from her birth family. Morbid Facts, Part 403. Liam Neeson's wife, actress Natasha Richardson, was taking a beginner ski lesson on a bunny hill when she suddenly fell without a helmet on. She initially refused any medical help but complained about a severe headache a few hours later. Richardson was soon flown to the hospital where she died 2 days later from a brain bleed. A park ranger on Rinka Island once sat down in his office and was attacked by a Komodo dragon hiding under his desk. Turns out the cleaner had accidentally left the door open the night before and the massive lizard snuck inside. The ranger received 30 stitches at the hospital and managed to survive, but has since quit his job and now suffers from PTSD. Harvard Law School professor Roger Fisher had an interesting idea to prevent the unjustified launch of nuclear weapons. He proposed implanting the U.S. nuclear launch codes inside a person's body next to their heart, so that the president would have to take a life in order to activate the country's nuclear weapons. Morbid Facts, Part 404. In 2001, actress Rebecca Gayheart struck and killed a 9-year-old boy who was attempting to cross the street. Other cars had stopped to allow the boy to cross, but she apparently lost her patience and drove into the turn lane to go around them, accidentally running the boy over in the process. She only received probation and a $2,800 fine. A Canadian man getting a rectal exam by his doctor at the hospital was observed by people he assumed were medical students. But he ended up suing the hospital and the observers after learning they were actors who played doctors on the TV show Saving Hope and were trying to prepare for their roles. A man from Alabama recently died after having the wrong organ removed during a horrific surgery in Florida. 70-year-old Bill Bryan was scheduled to have his spleen removed, but the surgeon mistakenly removed his liver instead. According to medical records, the surgeon didn't realize his mistake at the time and proceeded to label the removed liver specimen as spleen. Morbid Facts, Part 405. In Connecticut, 1986, 39-year-old flight attendant Helly Crafts was brutally murdered by her husband Richard after she caught him cheating on her. He then put her body through a wood chipper and ground her remains into a lake. Richard was sentenced to 50 years in prison but has since been released. Today would have been the 50th birthday of Iranian filmmaker Babak Karamdan. In 2021, he was murdered by his parents in an honor killing for still being single at the age of 46. Babak's parents confessed to drugging and stabbing their son several times, later stating that they were proud of their actions and showed no remorse. An Indiana judge recently ruled that taxpayers will be funding the sex reassignment surgery of a vicious murderer in prison. Jonathan Richardson was convicted of fatally strangling his 11-month-old stepdaughter in 2001. The ruling states that the surgery is a medical necessity that is required to prevent a risk of serious bodily and psychological harm. This elderly couple just agreed to be euthanized. Former Royal Air Force engineer Pete Scott and his retired nurse wife Christine have signed up for a double SUI pod in Switzerland, where voluntary assisted SUI has been legal since 1942. The pair made the decision after 80-year-old Christine was diagnosed with early-stage vascular dementia. Married for 46 years, they plan to die peacefully together in each other's arms with the help of the sarcophagus pod. This controversial death capsule works by replacing air with 100% nitrogen, which quickly renders the occupant unconscious and fully stops their breathing within 10 minutes, resulting in a swift, painless death. As stated by Pete, we have had long, happy, healthy, fulfilled lives, but here we are in old age and it does not do nice things to you. The idea of watching the slow degradation of Chris's mental abilities is horrific to me. Obviously, I would care for her to the point I could not, but she has nursed enough people with dementia throughout her career to be adamant that she wants to remain in control of herself and her life. Assisted dying gives her that opportunity, and I would not want to go on living without her. Morbid Facts, Part 407. Nicknamed the Princess of R&B, popular singer Aaliyah lost her life in a tragic private plane crash when she was just 22 years old. Despite being warned that there was far too much wait for a safe flight, she and her entourage were eager to return home and demanded to leave immediately. Shortly after takeoff, the plane lost its balance and crashed just 200 feet from the runway, killing everyone on board. In 2013, the body of 17-year-old Kendrick Johnson was found inside of a rolled-up gym mat at his Georgia high school. Authorities later concluded that he had become trapped upside down while trying to retrieve his shoes, and eventually died from positional asphyxia. In 2002, schizophrenic British artist Richard Sumner entered a remote forest in Wales. He apparently handcuffed himself to a tree and threw the keys out of reach. His skeleton was found 3 years later, with evidence suggesting he likely regretted his decision. Morbid Facts, Part 408. American actor and model John Eric Hexum was once seen as the next big thing in Hollywood due to his charming looks, charisma, and radio voice. But in 1984, he died on the set of the TV show Cover Up after accidentally discharging a blank cartridge into his skull. Hexum had apparently been playing Russian roulette with a prop gun during a break in filming, and the muzzle blast caused enough blunt force trauma to fracture a piece of his skull that propelled into his brain. Serial killer Israel Keyes went the extra mile to ensure that he would never be detected. He had no preferred victim type and never killed in the same area twice. For one murder, he flew to Chicago and drove 1,000 miles all the way to Vermont in a rental car, then used a murder kit he'd hidden there 2 years prior. When shopping on his murder trips, he always kept his phone turned off and only ever paid in cash. But Keyes was caught in 2012 after using a victim's credit card when he didn't have any cash on hand. Morbid Facts, Part 409. In November of '99, the girlfriend of Panthers wide receiver Ray Caruth was shot 4 times and later died in the hospital. It was soon determined that her NFL boyfriend had hired a hitman to kill her after she reportedly refused to abort their baby. The baby ended up surviving, and Caruth went to prison for 19 years before being released in 2018. During a tense pro basketball game in 1992, Serbian player Boban Jankovic was frustrated with a foul call and slammed his head into a padded concrete post. He immediately dropped to the floor and was never able to walk again after badly damaging his spinal cord. Earlier this year, 44-year-old Pennsylvania man John Matthew Chapman was sentenced to life in prison after driving his girlfriend across the country and luring her into a Nevada desert for a bondage photo shoot. He then bound her to a signpost with zip ties, taped her mouth and nose shut, and watched as she died. Morbid Facts, Part 410. Last September, 39-year-old Florida mom Kathy Griffith was brutally stabbed to death by her teenage son Colin. He called 911 saying, "I had a very, very long fight with my mom. She fell on a knife and she's bleeding from the neck." Police arriving at the scene described Colin as showing zero emotion, and the first thing he said to them was, "I know my rights." This all transpired just 1 year after Colin was charged with fatally shooting his divorced father Charles, but was released on the claim of self-defense. Kathy trusted her son at the time and even bailed him out of jail. Leading up to Kathy's murder, Colin had reportedly threatened to kill his mother many times, but she continued to love him unconditionally. He was said to be a very spoiled child who had been in and out of mental facilities for years after being diagnosed with PTSD. According to reports, Colin developed this after being held captive by his father for over 1,000 days without human contact upon telling his dad that he was gay. Colin has been charged with first-degree murder, as prosecutors have described him as a violent murderer who must be kept separate from civil society.